Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a completely apocalyptic thought experiment and using it as a sort of masterclass on the incredible invisible forces that are literally keeping us alive right now. We never really feel it, but our planet is constantly in motion, completing a full rotation every single 24 hours. But what would happen if that motion just suddenly stopped?
Imagine the unthinkable for a second. Imagine someone just yanks the cosmic emergency brake, and the Earth's rotation screeches to a sudden, absolute halt for just 5 short seconds. Honestly, it sounds like a brief pause, right? Almost harmless. But as we're going to see, the physics of our planet dictate a much more violent reality.
Here's the thing. Even though the solid ground beneath your feet has stopped moving, the atmosphere has massive momentum and it just keeps on going. Because the Earth rotates fastest right at the equator, if the planet halted, the atmosphere there would continue moving at the Earth's rotational speed. That means anything not firmly anchored deep into bedrock would be hit by a supersonic wind blasting at 1,670 kilometers per hour. We're talking winds acting like 1,000 hurricanes all at once, just completely obliterating structures and sweeping the landscape clean.
Now, maybe you're thinking, well, I don't live at the equator, so I'm good. But this brilliantly illustrates that absolutely nowhere is truly safe. If you live further from the equator, say down in New Zealand or over in France, you'd experience what we could loosely call milder winds. But actually, scratch that. Because at 1,180 kilometers per hour, these gusts are still vastly stronger than any storm ever recorded in human history. Doesn't matter if you're in an open field or a steel-reinforced building. These winds have enough brute force to literally tear up the Earth's crust itself.
Hearing about those insane wind speeds, you might actually wonder if you'd just be swept right off the face of the Earth and thrown into outer space. But luckily, physics has a very strict speed limit for that. To break free of Earth's gravitational pull, an object needs to hit escape velocity, and that is roughly 40,000 kilometers per hour. So no, you wouldn't fly into space. Instead, you, and pretty much everything else, would just be hurled a massive distance eastward across the planet's surface.
As famous astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson perfectly deadpans here, surviving this initial blast of inertia would essentially be impossible for anyone up on the surface. People flying out of windows is putting it mildly. It would simply be a remarkably bad day to be on Earth.
So the crucial takeaway here is this terrifying 1-2-3 punch of inertia. First, the atmosphere keeps moving. Second, those supersonic winds level our infrastructure, snapping global power grids and communication lines instantly. And third, that massive shift in momentum violently ravages the crust, triggering massive global earthquakes. Really, the only way you might momentarily survive this initial destruction is if you were already hiding deep underground in a reinforced bunker or maybe a subway tunnel.
So how does all this destruction actually scale with time? Let's look at this table. Even a tiny 1 millisecond pause would cause mechanical tremors. But just a single second of a pause? That brings catastrophic global ruin from the inertia and extreme weather. Bump that up to 5 seconds, and the momentum transfer amplifies the devastation exponentially. An hour or more, you are looking at a permanent, totally planet-altering environmental shift.
But believe it or not, the wind and the earthquakes are just the opening act of our 5-second disaster. To understand the next catastrophe, we have to talk about centrifugal force. Because the Earth spins, it pushes matter outward, and that creates a physical bulge right around the equator. Our oceans naturally gather around this equatorial bulge, essentially held there by the planet's constant rotation.
If that spin stops, the outward push just vanishes, gone entirely. Gravity would suddenly exert its full, unmitigated pull on everything. Because of that, you would actually feel about 0.3% heavier if you were standing at the equator. Your mass hasn't changed at all, but the loss of that slight centrifugal lift makes you measurably heavier.
And without that spin, the loss of the bulge physically transforms the entire Earth into a perfect sphere. This is where things get incredibly terrifying for our oceans. All that water that was gathered near the equator, it has nothing holding it in place anymore. It would immediately flow away toward the poles. This massive displacement of the world's oceans would generate unbelievable mega tsunamis, violently sloshing billions of gallons of water straight toward the north and south poles.
But remember, our thought experiment was only for a 5-second pause. So boom, the Earth magically resumes its normal rotation. What happens to all that water? Well, that massive displaced wall of ocean violently backtracks. It rushes from the poles right back down to the equator, creating a double tsunami that slams in everything and everyone a second time.
Moving on to our next section, the long-term apocalypse. What if the Earth never spins again? Say the emergency brake just gets stuck, and the Earth never spins again.
Hiding in a subway tunnel really only buys you a little bit of time before total global climate collapse. That comforting 24-hour cycle we rely on would completely vanish. A single day and night would now take a full year, dictated entirely by Earth's orbit around the sun. One side of the planet would face the sun constantly, just baking in 6 months of scorching, relentless heat. The other side, plunged into 6 months of perpetually frozen darkness. Essential cycles for agriculture and plant life would just collapse entirely.
And the weather wouldn't just be extreme, the systems that actually regulate it would break down. Global weather patterns rely really heavily on the Coriolis effect, which is the deflection of moving air and water caused by Earth's spin. This effect is the engine for our trade winds, jet streams, and ocean currents. The exact moment the Earth stops spinning, the Coriolis effect ceases to exist. We're talking absolute meteorological chaos that would permanently ground all aviation and completely dismantle global shipping networks.
Geographically, we'd be looking at a completely alien planet. As the oceans settle permanently at the poles to flood those higher latitudes, the water literally drains away from the center of the planet. The entire equatorial region would be exposed, transforming into this massive, continuous dry basin that would be fundamentally uninhabitable because of the lack of water and the absolute extreme static temperatures.
And if all of that wasn't enough, our planetary defenses would fail. Earth's magnetic field is generated in part by the dynamo of its rotation. Without a spin, that magnetic field would drastically weaken, frying our orbital satellites, destroying GPS networks, and exposing any surviving life to super dangerous cosmic radiation. Plus, the sudden stop would disrupt the delicate gravitational balance between Earth and the Moon, causing the Moon to drift dangerously out of its regular orbit and right toward us.
Which brings us to our final section, why we keep on spinning, a 4.6 billion-year-old momentum.
Okay, I know that was a whole lot of doom and gloom, but fortunately, we are spinning very safely right now. Our rotation is actually this ancient momentum conserved from about 4.6 billion years ago. Back then, there was this huge swirling disk of gas and dust circling the sun. As the dust and rock grains clumped together to form our planet, those literal collisions generated incredible rotational forces, setting the entire Earth spinning in one continuous direction.
It is the law of conservation of angular momentum in action. Because space is essentially a vacuum, there is almost zero friction or resistance to slow us down. So we've just kept that exact initial momentum going for billions of years. Think of it like a cosmic figure skater pulling their arms in and spinning effortlessly, forever. Now, the Moon's tidal friction is technically slowing us down by an incredibly tiny fraction, lengthening our day by just 1 second every 50,000 years. But a sudden stop? That's entirely impossible.
So having explored the catastrophic winds, the wildly shifting oceans, and the violent, invisible physics that our spinning planet safely manages for us every single second, I just want to leave you with a thought. The next time you watch a beautiful, peaceful sunset, take a second to ponder the absolute massive kinetic energy rushing right beneath your feet. Will you ever take the simple rhythm of day and night for granted again? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today on The Explainer. Keep asking those absurd questions, because as we've seen, they teach us exactly how our incredible world works.